This is impossible. And right up until the moment that Christ had resurrected from the dead, and the whispers of his rebirth had made its rounds, this reaction from St. Thomas to doubt it all entirely seems entirely rational. Because how could it possibly be? He inspects the marks on his hands, the wound at his midsection. It's all a little overwhelming. And that, my friends, is exactly the point. Where most would think to recount the scene of this miracle in the story of Christ's return in a way that would feel larger than life itself, Caravaggio leans into the very real nature of people. He doesn't need ornaments or a grandiose setting, mythical motifs and religious symbolism. He only needs the natural response of a man in utter disbelief to suspend us in our own version of it. There are 4 important figures in the painting, set in a 3/4 frame, and he tells us exactly where to look, and all you really need to do is follow the light. The picture is anchored on the furrowed forehead of St. Thomas, but he is not alone in the frame. The light also cascades off the heads of Peter and John, and Caravaggio reveals his first motif, in a dialogue. The resurrection of Christ is not about the mystical account of the inconceivable, but rather a response to the miracle itself. The conversion of disbelief into faith through the accounts of real people who witnessed a real event, it's puzzling, for Thomas especially, and Caravaggio lights his arm to reinforce the expedition of solving an impossible riddle in one's own head. Another device which lends to a second motif, which is again revealed in the light. With one hand, Christ exposes his wounded torso, and with the other he guides the hand of Thomas. The flesh of the immortal touches the flesh of man. And Thomas no longer bears witness to the miracle, he experiences it. He touches it with his own finger, and we, the audience, feel as though, in this moment, we are touching it too. It's all so intimate and suddenly somehow also possible, and in a way that only Caravaggio would, he underpins it all with a final gesture. There is no halo over the head of Christ. There is no halo over the heads of these 3 saints. There is nothing supernatural about any of them. In the place of a god, he paints a man. In the place of incredulity, he shows us a path towards faith, and we, like Thomas, are left to use our instruments to decode the spectacular. Is the incredulity of St. Thomas. Completed in 6th chapter of John, in which Jesus appears to St. Thomas and the other apostles, and says to him, if St. Thomas is one of Caravaggio's most dramatic scenes, with light beaming down from heaven, and lightening each minute detail of Thomas's experience with the risen Lord. The primary subject of the painting is, ultimately, Thomas's finger, which is practically lodged within Christ's opened wound. But that's not actually the visual focus of the painting. Rather, Caravaggio puts Thomas's face in the dead center of the canvas, in perfect profile, with heavenly light showing us the nooks and crannies of his stunned expression. It's impossible to see this image without being immediately drawn to Thomas, whose disbelief is overwhelmed by the reality of Christ's resurrection. But even as we take in Thomas's expression, our eyes are drawn away from his face, following his gaze to his own finger. There's an interplay between these 2 points, Thomas's face and his hand, which calls the viewer to look back and forth between them, in case we too have doubts. As our gaze moves from Thomas's face to his finger, we see the hand of Christ guiding his finger into the wound, appearing before Thomas and pulling him into the mystery of his death and resurrection. And as we look between Thomas's gaping expression and Christ's gaping wound, our eyes must pass over the hand of Jesus. The incredulity of St. Thomas is also remarkable in that it shows no obvious divine symbols around Christ. There is no halo, no cloud, no cherub holding his garment. He stands before his disciples as a person, fully man, fully embodied, fully tangible. It is not only the mystery of the resurrection that Thomas struggles with, but the mystery of the incarnation itself. Can this really at the wound itself? It is not an idealized red stripe as part of a sanitized crucifixion scene. Rather, Caravaggio drives home the tangibility of Christ's body through the folds of the skin around Thomas's finger, which is doing more than just feeling the exterior. There's an intimate physicality here, which is unsettling and just plain body-like. The truth of the resurrection isn't shown through a beam of light or a holy aura coming from the wound. It's shown through the physical body of Christ, which is unmistakably human. Let's turn our attention away from the main action and take in the whole piece again. We can see that Caravaggio has placed all four characters in a small symmetrical diamond at the top of the painting. This placing gives the section beauty, but it also has meaningful significance. All four heads are gathered together, close enough to feel one another's breath. All eyes are fixed on Thomas's investigative finger. They are all wrapped up together in pursuit of the truth, and they witness it together as one. Christ is among these men as one of them, not separate, standing apart, but participating with them in their discovery of his infinite love. Yet Christ's face is different than that of the apostles. His eyes follow the action, but he is facing the others while they face him. His purpose for being there is to present himself to his friends and to draw them closer to his love. His face is obscured by the shadows, perhaps hinting at the unknowability of God. He remains an endless mystery to us, even when he is visible and present to our very senses. Is also unique in the painting because he is the only figure without a furrowed brow. He alone knows himself completely. He alone is not perplexed by the glory of the resurrection. Meanwhile, the similarities between the apostles' faces, with wrinkled foreheads, darkened eyes, and stern expressions, all serve to show that Thomas is not alone. He's the only one whose hand is touching Christ's side, but his companions, Peter and John, are just as eager to examine Jesus as he is. So often, we look at Thomas as unique, as the proverbial doubting Thomas, who was the only one of the apostles to vocally express reluctance for believing in the resurrection. We forget that. We often think of Thomas alone as a doubter, as though the other apostles had no trouble with this earth-shattering claim. But here, Caravaggio shrewdly brings the other apostles into the scene, showing Peter and John being almost equally involved in Thomas's investigation. They, like us, can benefit from Thomas's experience with the body of the risen Christ. They, like us, want to see and touch and know beyond all doubt that their Lord is before them in the flesh. They, like us, must face their own doubt.